The Nevada desert stretches for hundreds of miles in every direction. Nothing but cracked earth, Joshua trees, and silence so deep you can almost hear your own heartbeat. But then, if you know exactly where to look, you'll see it. A restricted airspace that doesn't officially exist on civilian maps. Warning signs that tell you deadly force is authorized. Camouflaged watchtowers on ridgelines. And guards in unmarked vehicles who will follow you to the edge of a property line and stare at you without blinking. This is not a movie set. This is a real place on American soil. And for over 70 years, the United States government has gone to extraordinary lengths. Extraordinary, almost obsessive lengths to keep you from knowing what happens inside. The base has no official address. Its budget was classified for decades. Its workers were flown in on unmarked planes with blacked-out windows. And the men and women who worked there signed agreements so airtight that many of them took their secrets to their graves. So the question that millions of people around the world have been asking since the 1950s remains. What is inside Area 51? And more importantly, is the truth stranger than anything we've imagined? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn isn't theory, it's history. Documented, declassified, and in some cases, still unexplained. Let's start with the geography, because it matters more than most people realize. About 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, sits a dry lakebed called Groom Lake. It's flat, it's remote. The surrounding mountains act as a natural barrier on nearly every side. You cannot see into the valley from any public road. You cannot fly over it without triggering military intercept protocols. And you absolutely cannot walk onto it without risking arrest or worse. The nearest town, Rachel, Nevada, has a population of roughly 50 people. Their local diner is called the Little A Lynn. They sell alien merchandise to tourists who drive out hoping to catch a glimpse of something they can't explain. Most of them leave with nothing but dust on their boots. But here's what separates the myth from the reality. Area 51 is not some abandoned Cold War relic. It is an active United States Air Force installation. Satellites have photographed its expanding runways. Aviation enthusiasts have tracked the unmarked Boeing 737s, nicknamed Janet Airlines, that shuttle workers from Las Vegas McCarran Airport to the base 6 days a week. This place is alive. It is operational. And whatever is happening behind those mountains is still happening right now as you watch this. That alone should give you pause. To understand Area 51, you have to go back to the most dangerous decade in American history. The year is 1947. World War II has just ended. The Soviet Union, which was America's ally against Nazi Germany, has almost overnight become its greatest existential threat. The Soviets have exploded their first nuclear bomb by 1949. By the early 1950s, both superpowers are locked in what will become a 40-year standoff with the potential to end civilization as we know it. America is terrified, and with good reason. The United States military desperately needs to know what the Soviets are building. What missiles do they have? Where are their military installations? How many bombers are they producing? The problem is that you can't just send a spy plane over Soviet territory without risking an international catastrophe or a shoot-down. Enter the Central Intelligence Agency and enter one of the brilliant aviation engineers of the 20th century, a man named Kelly Johnson. Kelly worked for Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works division, a secret engineering unit so compartmentalized that even most Lockheed employees didn't know it existed. His mandate in the early 1950s was simple and audacious. Build an aircraft that can fly so high and so fast that no enemy missile or fighter jet on Earth can touch it. What he designed was the U-2 spy plane, an aircraft with a wingspan wider than a Boeing 737, capable of flying at altitudes above 70,000 feet. a plane so advanced for its time that it looked less like a military aircraft and more like a motorized glider designed by someone who saw the future. But a plane like that can't be tested at a regular Air Force base. Too many eyes, too many questions. It needs space. It needs secrecy. It needs somewhere so isolated that even the nearest rancher is 20 miles away. In 1955, CIA officer Richard Bissell and Kelly Johnson climbed into a small aircraft and began surveying the Nevada desert from the air. When they passed over Groom Lake, Bissell looked down at the flat, perfect lake bed and said words to the effect of, "That's the place." Project Aquatone was born, and so was the legend of Area 51. The base was built almost overnight: runways, hangars, barracks, a control tower. Workers were brought in under strict non-disclosure agreements. The location appeared on no official government map. President Eisenhower personally approved the program and personally approved the secrecy measures surrounding it. By 1956, the U-2 was flying test missions over Groom Lake. By 1957, it was flying operational reconnaissance missions over the Soviet Union. For 3 years, America was watching the Soviets from heights they didn't even believe were possible. Until May 1st, 1960. Pilot Francis Gary Powers took off from a base in Pakistan on a routine U-2 mission over Soviet territory. His route would take him across some of the most sensitive military installations in the USSR before landing in Norway. He never made it. Near the city of Sverdlovsk, a Soviet surface-to-air missile struck Powers' aircraft. The U-2 broke apart at altitude. Powers survived the ejection and parachuted into Soviet hands, along with pieces of the aircraft, classified camera equipment, and enough evidence to prove that the United States had been conducting massive secret aerial espionage for years. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Eisenhower was humiliated on the world stage. A planned summit with Soviet Premier Khrushchev collapsed. The Cold War, already frozen, dropped another 10 degrees. But here's what most people don't focus on. The incident revealed something that would define Area 51 for decades. The program had been so secret that when the Soviets first announced they had shot down an American aircraft, the United States government issued a cover story, claiming it was merely a weather research plane that had gone off course. They lied, publicly, officially, on the record. And when the Soviets produced Powers alive and displayed the wreckage, the lie collapsed in real time on the world stage. For the American public, this was a revelation. Their own government had been conducting massive secret programs using secret aircraft built at a secret base and had been prepared to lie about all of it without hesitation. That realization planted a seed of suspicion that has never fully gone away. After the U-2 program, you might expect that Area 51's story would fade, that the base would either close or settle into quiet irrelevance. Instead, it went in the opposite direction. The early 1960s brought a new aircraft program to Groom Lake, one so classified that even the U-2 program looked transparent by comparison. The A-12 Oxcart. If the U-2 was advanced, the A-12 was from another dimension. It flew at Mach 3.2, more than 3 times the speed of sound, at altitudes exceeding 90,000 feet. Its airframe was constructed largely from titanium because aluminum couldn't handle the heat generated by flying that fast through the atmosphere. Its fuel was so specialized it had to be developed from scratch. Its radar cross-section was deliberately minimized using early stealth technology. It looked like nothing else in the sky: sleek, black, angular. When people in Nevada saw it at dusk or dawn, catching the last light of the sun while flying at impossible speeds and altitudes, they reported it as a UFO. And here is where the story gets genuinely extraordinary. The United States Air Force and CIA were aware that A-12 test flights were generating UFO reports. They were aware that civilians were calling in sightings. They were aware that the question of what people were seeing was becoming a matter of public debate. And they made a deliberate decision. Let them think it's extraterrestrial. Declassified CIA documents from the 1990s explicitly acknowledge that a significant percentage of UFO reports from the 1950s and 1960s were in fact sightings of classified aircraft tested over Nevada. The government did not simply ignore UFO reports. In some cases, they actively used public belief in alien spacecraft as a cover story for classified aviation programs. That is not conspiracy theory. That is a declassified government document. The SR-71 Blackbird followed the A-12. Then came the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter, tested at Groom Lake in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s. When the F-117 began operational test flights, witnesses across Nevada and California reported seeing a triangular aircraft that didn't match anything in public aviation databases. The Air Force repeatedly denied its existence, until 1988, when they acknowledged it publicly, years after it had already been flying combat-ready missions. The pattern is consistent. Build it in secret, test it in secret, deny it exists. Let the UFO mythology grow around it like moss around a stone. Then, eventually, decades later, acknowledge it, by which point the technology has already been superseded by whatever they're testing now. Which raises the most important question: what are they testing now? As of today, Area 51 has expanded significantly from what satellite imagery showed in the 1980s. New hangar facilities, expanded runway infrastructure, underground construction visible from above. Workers are still being flown in 5 and 6 days a week on those unmarked Janet Airlines flights. The base is not dormant. It is not a museum. Whatever classified aviation or defense programs the United States is currently developing, hypersonic aircraft, directed energy weapons, advanced drone systems, stealth technologies that haven't been publicly acknowledged, they are almost certainly being developed and tested in the skies above Groom Lake. But then there's the other side of this story, the side that involves a man named Bob Lazar. In 1989, a soft-spoken physicist appeared on a Las Vegas television station and made claims that shook the UFO research community to its core. His name was Robert Scott Lazar. He claimed that he had been hired through a subcontractor to work at a facility he called S4, a location he described as adjacent to Area 51, built into the side of a mountain with hangar doors disguised as the rock face itself. And he claimed that inside those hangars, he personally worked on the propulsion systems of 9 recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft. He described the propulsion as gravity wave-based, using an element he called Element 115, which did not appear on the periodic table at the time. He described the craft as disc-shaped, approximately 15 meters in diameter. He described what sounded like a reactor that generated power by annihilating matter with antimatter. The scientific community largely dismissed him. His credentials were questioned. His background was difficult to verify, which he claimed was the result of deliberate record erasure by the government. But here is where the story takes a turn that even skeptics have had difficulty dismissing entirely. In 2003, 14 years after Lazar first described element 115, Russian scientists synthesized a new element and named it Moscovium, atomic number 115. It was placed on the periodic table exactly where Lazar had described. Does that confirm his story? No. Scientists correctly point out that Lazar's description of the element's properties doesn't match what was actually synthesized. But it raises a question that has never been entirely put to rest. How did Bob Lazar know that element 115 would be created? His supporters say he worked with it. His critics say he made an educated guess. The truth, as with so much about Area 51, remains in a place where certainty becomes very difficult to maintain. Consider for a moment the men and women who actually built Area 51. Not the scientists or the test pilots, though their stories are remarkable, but the construction workers, the maintenance crews, the radar technicians who worked 12-hour shifts in the Nevada heat and went home to families who couldn't be told where they worked or what they did. When the CIA finally acknowledged Area 51's existence in 2013 in response to a Freedom of Information Act request filed by historian Jeffrey Richelson, former workers who had spent decades in silence finally had a name they could say out loud. Some of them wept. One veteran who had spent years working on classified aircraft at Groom Lake reportedly said that the hardest part wasn't the secrecy. It wasn't the isolation or the desert heat or the constant surveillance. The hardest part was knowing he had contributed to something genuinely historic and being unable to tell a single person. These were human beings who served their country in complete anonymity, who protected secrets so sensitive that the maintenance of those secrets was judged to be worth more than their own ability to speak freely, who died, in some cases, before the programs they worked on were ever declassified. There is something both deeply patriotic and deeply troubling about that picture, and it points to the fundamental tension at the heart of Area 51, a tension that isn't about aliens or spacecraft or secret technologies. It's about the relationship between a government and the people it serves. When a democratic government decides that certain information is too sensitive for its citizens to know and then actively constructs false narratives to keep those citizens misdirected, at what point does necessary secrecy become something else? The UFO mythology that grew up around Area 51 wasn't entirely accidental. It was, in part, cultivated, a useful fog. And the American public, conditioned by decades of that fog, now finds it genuinely difficult to separate fact from fiction when it comes to this place, which may be exactly the point. So, what is actually hidden at Area 51? Here is what we know with certainty. It is the birthplace of the most advanced aviation technology in human history, the U-2, the A-12 Oxcart, the SR-71 Blackbird, the F-117 stealth fighter. Programs so secret that many of them weren't acknowledged for 30, 40, even 50 years after they began. We know that the United States government deliberately used UFO mythology as a cover for classified aircraft programs, confirmed in declassified documents. We know that the base is operational today and that its infrastructure has significantly expanded in recent decades. We know that the government's own track record at this location, lying about the U-2 shootdown, denying the F-117 for years, refusing to acknowledge the base's existence until 2013, gives any rational person reason to ask hard questions about what the current cover story might be. And we know this: every technology that has emerged from Groom Lake has been, at the time of its creation, so far beyond what was publicly known that it would have seemed, to any reasonable person, like science fiction. Whatever is inside Area 51 today almost certainly follows that same pattern. It is technology that seems impossible right up until the moment it isn't. Whether that technology is purely terrestrial, the product of human genius operating under the pressure of national security, or whether it involves something else entirely, something recovered, something not built on this earth. That answer remains, for now, beyond the fence line, behind the warning signs, in the hands of people who signed agreements they will never break. They say that the truth is out there. But at Area 51, the truth has an armed escort, a blacked-out flight manifest, and a security clearance you will never receive. And somehow, that is the most American story ever told.